I'm not starting a new religion, chas v'shalom. But you know, it's a big schlep. You're going to go all the way, you're going to travel all the way. Don't start traveling all the way. You're going to schlep all the way to not only that, there's a border you have to cross. They'll charge you taxes to cross, and they'll check your passport. Pain. We'll do you a taiva. We'll build a nice base medrash in Don, and a nice one in Beis Sale. We'll make it convenient. What happened? So, the Satmar Rebbe has a beautiful piece in Parshas Truma. Parshas Truma, Ois Kuf Pei Zayin, in which he explains the Aveira of yeroboam. He also goes with the Shita of the overwhelming majority of Mefarshim that this was not an Avodah Zarah. This was not a base Avodah Zarah. This was a bias that was built to bring Karbanos Lashem. The Satmar Rebbe begins from an issue later. Later on, we find that there was an individual named Gehazi. Gehazi was a shamis for Elisha, who eventually left Elisha. And Elisha tried to get him to be chayzer b'tshuva. The Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Kuf Zayin says that Elisha came to him and he said, Chazar bach, do tshuva. And Gehazi said, Kach mekublani mimcha. I have a Kabbalah. Hachroitei v'amachti esarabim, emaspikim biyodei lasis tshuva. He said, I was machtig yidden, tshuva's not going to work. In fact, the Gemara, Ma'yovid, where do we find that Gehazi didn't have error to be machtig yidden, to cause yidden to sin? Where? So the Gemara adds something regarding these Eglezav. The Gemara says that Gehazi was with yeroboam when he set up these Eglezav. And he wanted to make this a spectacular vision, these calves. So he created Ikadi Amri, Even She'eves, Tola, Lachatas yeroboam, Ve'amidai ben Shemayim La'aretz. That he created a magnetic instrument by which this calf, which obviously had some type of metal in the middle of it, was standing off the ground, was lifted up off the ground, and therefore it looked much more spectacular. The Ikadi Amri, Shem Chakak Bepiyah, that Gehazi was a Talmud Chacham. Al Pi Kabbalah, he wrote a shame, and he put it in the mouths of these golden calves. V'hoisa machrezes v'imeres anochi Hashem alekecha asher hoitzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. So people would come in, and the golden calf would talk, and it would say, Anochi Hashem alekecha asher hoitzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. An incredible thing. So Memela, the Jews came, they believed in the golden calf. It was talking. This is before Mattel and Hasbro. This is when they didn't have such things that could talk like this. Here it's talking, said all man. So the Satmar Rebbe says, 1 minute. Avodah Zarah. This Gemara seems to say that he made an Avodah Zarah. After all, he made a golden calf that said, I am God. If the golden calf said, I am God, then it was Avodah Zarah. The Satmar Rebbe says it's not logical that they were Ovid Avodah Zarah, and he quotes the Radak. They weren't Ovid Avodah Zarah. Number 2, the Satmar Rebbe writes, we never find in Tanakh the name Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, for an Avodah Zarah. We find Elokim, we find other expressions of Kale or of Ale on Avodah Zarah, but never the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. So what does it mean? The golden calf said, Anochi Hashem Alekecha, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. And Avodah Zarah is not Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. So the Satmar Rebbe, no. Yeroboam ben Nabat did not create a golden calf to be an Avodah Zarah. No. The calf got up, and the calf was saying, Anochi Hashem Alekecha. He's referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's referring to Hashem, the Creator, the Hashem we all believe in. The calf was saying over the beginning of the Aseres HaDibros, Anochi Hashem Alekecha, not as if to imply that the calf is an Avodah Zarah. No. The calf was saying, Anochi Hashem Alekecha, in the sense that it was saying over the tzavah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that actually this was not a base Avodah Zarah at all. Oh, now it's not so bad. So Yeroboam had hanging in his base medrash. Not only we have hanging a big Anochi Hashem Alekecha, luchais, so he had a talking luchais. He had a calf talking, telling people Aseres HaDibros. No, it's not so bad, is it? This is called being machti esarabim. Why? The truth is that there's a derech mamutza in understanding what happened with Yeroboam. It was not Avodah Zarah, but it sure was Avodah Zarah. If we think back, as an example, let's look back to the beginning of the Reform movement. The Reform movement traces itself back to the mid-18th century. Generally, the influences of Moses Mendelssohn, who was a German Jew, generally understood to be the beginning of the Reform movement. Now, the Reform don't like to say that Moses Mendelssohn founded Reform because they have a complaint. Moses Mendelssohn was personally an observant Jew who believed in God. So how could he be Reform? That's not Reform. Nevertheless, Mendelssohn laid the groundwork of what became the Reform movement. A number of years ago, I believe it was in '86, there was an article in the Jewish Observer. Someone wrote an article on Moses Mendelssohn, a very nice article, historical piece. And it caused a certain amount of controversy. Now, I don't mean political controversy, but historical controversy. Who was Mendelssohn? Was he an observant Jew? Was he not an observant Jew? Was he someone that was looking to be a mesis umediach, to push Jews away from Hashem? Was he someone who was well-intentioned? If you look at Mendelssohn's writings, you see that he believed in Sinai, Torah Sinai. He believed in a Bayrei Olam. He believed in he kept daven 3 times a day. Adarabba, it's written in, when they write his biography, they write how even in the king's palaces, where Mendelssohn was able to get in because of the high regard the Goyim had for him, he would stop in the middle and say, Shkia, time for mincha. Maybe it was a chassid, he davened a little later. But when it came to the end of mincha, he stopped, he went out to daven mincha. But Mendelssohn, he wasn't, from his writings, it does not seem that he was anything but a personally observant Jew. What did he do? He tried to get Yidden to open up, to be worldly, to open up, to make certain slight changes in their lives, to learn German, to teach in German. He opened up certain areas that had never been open to the Jews of his society. And from that came out a tremendous destruction. There's a tshuva in the Ha'elef L'cha Shloimo, on Yeredeya, tshuva Reish Nun Zayin. Reb Shlomo Kluger was asked about Moses Mendelssohn. He was asked by a shul, there was a Beis Medrash. Mendelssohn wrote the Beyor, the translation of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. The translation was really faithful to Am Yisrael. There were certain tainas they had in different lines, but you can always have a taina to one word or another. It was basically faithful. But Mendelssohn's goal in writing the translation was to get Jews to learn German. So Reb Shlomo Kluger was asked that in the shul there was a big fight. There was a chabura learning, studying the Beyor, studying Chumash from Mendelssohn's translation. And there was another group that screamed at them and took it away and burnt all the copies of the Beyor. So they write to Reb Shlomo Kluger, who's right? So Reb Shlomo Kluger writes back to him that to burn them, I don't know if they're right to pick them up and burn the Svar. But as far as Mendelssohn personally, he says, I don't know him. I know he's Yefrum, Nishfrum. But I see the people that follow him. And the people that follow him are the people that are taking Yidden away from Yiddishkeit, not towards Yiddishkeit. He writes, he'll tell me that his rebbe was Reb David Frankel, the Karban HaEda, Reb Yaakov Emden, great Gedolei Yisrael, taught him. So he compares Mendelssohn to yeroboam ben Nabat. Says yeroboam ben Nabat came from the same good stock. He had a rebbe, Yachi Yashilaini, who taught him, who he had respect for. And he was a gadol, a Talmid Chacham. But he swayed. He strayed a little. And from straying a little, it led to what yeroboam ben Nabat led to. It led ultimately to the 10 Shvatim breaking away totally, ultimately being Ovdei Avodah Zarah, and ultimately losing their whole chelik in Elam Haba. Most of the 10 Shvatim are gone. We have to understand yeroboam ben Nabat and what he does here in the light of those who look to adapt Yiddishkeit, like the Baal Tosef Isser, to make certain changes in Yiddishkeit which might be small in their view, but they're not small. Because Yiddishkeit is a discipline. You either have it or you don't. You can't take Judaism and break off just one mitzvah and keep the rest of it and everything's fine. That's not Yiddishkeit. We find later that Eliyahu Hanavi comes up to Har HaKarmel. And he gets up in Har HaKarmel, and he's talking to Jews of the 10 Shvatim, who already later became Oivdei HaBaal. Okay, you want to follow Hashem? Follow totally. But why say the flip side? If Labaal, go totally Labaal. So the satmar Rebbe writes in the same piece, he says you have to make up your mind. Either it's Yiddishkeit or it's not Yiddishkeit. If you want, start Baal, be members of Baal. But don't start a new movement, conserve a Baal in your Judaism. Don't start some new thing which is within Yiddishkeit and it's different. That's much more dangerous than starting something new. You want to start Avodah Zarah, start Avodah Zarah. Start a new movement, a new thing, break away, say what you are. It's much more dangerous for Klal Yisrael to start adapting Yiddishkeit. Because Jews, on a whole, never, ever have a mass movement away from Yiddishkeit. Well, when they were threatened with death, sometimes people converted. But it never happened that a Yid, who's a Mamin B'Hashem, should have a mass movement away from Yiddishkeit. But once you start and you say, well, really, we'll keep all the mitzvahs. We'll make slight changes. We'll make slight adaptations. We'll have a rule that, for the Masada Kedushin, we could have a Reform rabbi. Everything else will go Kedasu Kedin. Everything will even break a glass. Everything Kedasu Kedin. We'll make one slight change. What's bad with that? What's wrong? What's wrong is Yiddishkeit is a discipline. Bal Tosef, once you add, you want to make a change, fine, make a change. But don't call it Yiddishkeit. A number of years ago, I was in a car, and I overheard a radio show where Alexander Schindler, who was at that time the head of the Reform movement, was answering phone calls. He was a guest. He knew he was in New York. He knew he was going to get calls from Orthodox people. And he was prepared. And I was in the car, someone called him. An Orthodox person called him and took him to task. So he answered. What was his answer? He said, I put on tefillin every day. I say Shema every day and every night. That's how he started his defense. Now he threw the person off. I'm not so bad. I put on tefillin every day. No, that's pretty good. He davens every day. That's also pretty good. If I cared. If he wouldn't put on tefillin every day, if he wouldn't daven every day, if he wouldn't keep Pesach and Sukkot, he'll make a new holiday like they wanted to make that year. Fine. We won't have so much of a problem with you. But to go and take Yiddishkeit and twist it in a way that's not Yiddishkeit, that's yeroboam ben nabat. That can lead Aseres Hashvatim. The Yerushalmi says